The United States is, of course, secular. Joe Biden as the president, is completely broken, making way more money. Overall, I'd have to rate this mod Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today we are doing a mod review for the mod called Modern EU4. But before this video begins, don't forget to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Did you know that there's about an 83% chance that you're not subscribed, yet you're still watching my videos? So do us both a favor and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to hit 5,000 subscribers before the end of summer. With that out of the way, let's jump into Modern EU4. Modern EU4 is a mod that is supposed to take place in the modern day. As you can see, it is the 7th of May 2021, so it's a little bit past the modern day, but stuff is still relatively the same. Really, the only thing that I can say that it's missing is the Ukraine war. There's no Ukraine war. Instead, they still have the separatists here. Besides that, the maps and things like that for the various rebellions are still relatively the same. You have the Yemenis war, you have the Syrian war, and things like that. So a lot of this is quite accurate and is basically meant to show you what EU4 would be like if it took place in the modern day. They not only have the modern day borders, they also have the modern day leaders. So as you can see, we have Joe Biden as the president, we have Macron as the president of France, you have Angela Merkel, who is the chancellor of Germany. She's no longer the chancellor of Germany, but when this was made, she was the chancellor of Germany. So various things like that, which is really cool. On top of all of this, the mod also adds brand new trade goods, brand new trade nodes, and various new religions, as well as a ton of new buildings as well, and new army units, and that just barely scratches the surface. There's also new cultures as well, and many other things that we will go over in this video. So to start off, I wanted to show you all the religions. So as you can see, there are the normal religions that you would expect. You have, of course, the Sunni, the Tengri, the Hindus. However, as you can see, you do have Protestants, Catholics, and like that. But if you zoom in closer, especially in the West, you will see that there are majority Catholic and Protestants, but there is something wrong with them. There's actually this other religion here that these states follow, and it is called secular. So if you go ahead and take a look here, if you go ahead and look at France follows the secular religion, which gives these modifiers here extra tax, extra stability, less missionary strength, extra tolerance of heretics, extra tolerance of heathens, and extra religious unity. So even though France is majority Catholic, they are following the secular religion here. In fact, pretty much all Western countries, including the United States, follow the whole secular religion. So really the only nations in the West that are not secular is going to be Denmark. Denmark is actually still Protestant, which I find to be quite interesting, as well as Greece. Greece is also Orthodox here, but a majority of the nations in the West are still going to have the majority religions that people follow. So of course, Reformed, Protestant, Catholic, things like that. But there's another faith called irreligious, where you can typically find the irreligious faith in the former Soviet occupied nations. So as you can see, we have it here in the modern day Czech Republic with irreligious. And along with that, the People's Republic of China actually follows irreligious. So if you go ahead and look at China, as you can see, they are actually irreligious, but not a lot of nations actually follow the irreligious thing. Most of them are just going to be secular, but irreligious gives you these modifiers here. Less stability cost, that is really good. Extra morale of armies, extra tolerance of heretics, extra tolerance of heathens, and extra religious unity. It's important to know that irreligious actually does not give you the plus 100% religious unity like secularism does. So you still might have some instability if you are a nation following irreligious, like China, for example. Going over to Russia and things like that, of course, they all follow the irreligious path. I'm just going to go ahead and show you, as these religions are pretty much how you would expect. We have, again, some more irreligious. A lot of them are just going to be secular, though, even though they have all the religions that you'd expect people to follow. Majority of them are going to be secular. Of course, we have Russia here, who is secular, and going to the south, even India is secular, which is interesting. However, going over to the south, we also have Iran. So Iran actually follows Shia. They are not secular. We actually have Saudi Arabia, again, who is not secular. They follow Sunnism. A majority of Africa is not going to be secular. The only time that you really are going to get secularism is when you get to the former colonies that the Europeans had in Africa. However, if you go to North Africa, to Morocco and Algeria and things like that, all of these guys are pretty much going to be Sunni. Even Egypt is not irreligious. They are actually Sunni. However, you might have noticed this here as well, is there's actually Judaism. So Judaism does exist in this game, and of course it is through Israel, and we we have Israel on the map and things like that. And of course, they are Jewish and also follow the Israeli culture. So look at Israeli culture. It basically has nothing in common with it. It's just one standalone culture existing here in Israel. However, going to the south, as you can see, we have the Catholics. We do have some of these in Angola, as you can see here. Angola is actually a Catholic nation, a Catholic socialist republic, which is very interesting. And as well in the south, you have some Reformed and some Protestants and things like that, as well as some animists. Now, where this mod really changes things is in the New World. So look at this. We have Canada, United States, Mexico, Brazil, Bolivia, Argentina, Chile, all of this other stuff, Alaska, and everything like that. Really, really cool. You even have the lovely independent Greenland, which I love. However, they are a vassal of Denmark. They're also irreligious. But if you go ahead and look at the United States, as you can see, the United States is, of course, secular, but they have majority Protestant and Catholics. The United States is kind of split between Protestants within most of the country, but then you get to places such as California, such as New Mexico, Arizona, and especially Texas, even Louisiana. You are going to have some Catholics here, as well as some very unique cultures, which I actually wanted to start off showing the cultures in North America, as I think those are the coolest. You actually have, look at all these new cultures here. You have, of course, Dixie, which is in the same culture group as American, Western American. You have Texan, which is in the same culture group as Mexican, all these other ones, which I find to be quite interesting. You have the other cultures over here, and namely, you also have Navajo. You have Navajo here who actually are just completely by themselves. They do not have any other relations to any of the other cultures. It's just two provinces here. And then you also have these other ones here. You have the Dakota tribes, who again are not related to anyone else. I absolutely love how they put out the different cultures for the tribes. It's really cool and definitely adds a lot of flavor to the mod. One thing that I wanted to show is kind of the whole party process. So as you know, a majority of the nations are going to be republics, as you would imagine. These, of course, are republics, but they have the whole council mechanic. So they kind of use the whole Venetian factions mechanic. As you can see, there are quite a lot of factions here. So currently, of course, you have the Conservative Party, who's in charge of the United States. You have kind of these other parties. You have the National Socialist, the Nationalist Party, the Social Democratic Party. You have all of these other factions here, which is really cool. I love that they actually went in depth and added all of these different factions. So the factions will kind of give some other little bonuses here, just like they do in the base game, although there's way more factions here. So as you can see, we'll go ahead and look at the Communist Party that gives national unrest, stability, missionary strength, fort defense. Communist Party gives you domestic trade power, national manpower recovery, speed, goods produced, which is really cool. Liberal Party gives you yearly inflation reduction, trade power abroad, technology costs, yearly Republican tradition, and max promoted cultures. And the Social Democrats give you build cost, provincial trade power modifier, national tax modifier, national manpower. The Nationalists give you plus 15% morale of armies, extra army tradition, yearly prestige, core creation cost, which is really, really good. Minus 25% core creation cost is huge. And the National Socialist Party gives you cavalry combat ability, cost reducing war exhaustion, land leader fire discipline, and max promoted cultures. Of course, this isn't completely accurate, as the United States does not have any of these official parties. There is no National Socialist or Social Democratic Party in the United States. It's basically just two parties in the US. However, this does an excellent job in kind of showing how the republics work, and just does a great job adding a lot of flavor, which in the end of the day, that's what you want to have in a mod, is just flavor to make your game more enjoyable. So we have gone over the religions and the cultures in some places. The other thing that I wanted to show you all is kind of the government interactions. So we actually have what is called the European Union. So I'm sure you saw kind of with Denmark that it said that it was in the Holy Roman Empire. However, there is no HRE. Instead, that has been completely replaced with the European Union. However, there's still an emperor of the European Union, which is really cool to see, and kind of these whole European electors. I imagine getting elected is probably pretty much the same thing as you would within the HRE. However, I don't know if the AI will actually start filling these up if I was to give it time to pass. The Imperial Authority, of course, is not growing. It looks like that really the only reason why it's decreasing is kind of the heretic princes, where I don't really know how that works, as the dominant faith is religious peace, so I don't really know how that's working. Also, everyone is irreligious or secular rather, so I don't really know how that works, and just kind of the whole lack of electors. So there's no Imperial Authority here. However, it would be pretty interesting to see kind of everything get passed by the AI, assuming that they take control of the European Union. But this is not the HRE, this is the European Union, so don't get them confused. Along with some of these new interactions, the Council, the European Union, we actually have new ages. So as you can see here, we have the Age of Globalism. The menu is quite broken, so do keep that in mind. There is some stuff with this mod that is broken. I will go ahead and show you all the estates. The estate menu is completely broken, so don't be too hard on this mod, as it's still trying to work out a lot of the kinks as it goes on into 1.35 with all of the new states. But as you can see here, we have the Age of Globalism. So this gives various other ones here. So you get cavalry combat ability, cavalry flanking ability as the United States. For the Germans, you give extra 25% production efficiency, which is huge. As this nation here is Iran, you get the extra tolerance of heathens and missionary strength. You get some of these other little modifiers here that you can spend your splendor ability on. You can spend a nuclear project, so you can allow constructions of weapons of mass destruction. I don't know if this is locked until you get it. I mean, I would assume you can build weapons of mass destruction now, as it is 2021 and nuclear weapons have been accessible for a very long time. You of course have these other ones that you have to take off in order to get it, and you kind of have some of these other ages as well. You have World War III, you have Age of Empires, you have China's militarization, you have Fall of the USA, you have World Mysticism, you have Fall of Globalism, you actually have zombies and things like that. So this mod actually does have some other kind of events that it does. So as you can see, you have the Rise of the Zombies, Age of Communication, World After Zombies, things like that. So let me know if you guys would like to see me cover that in a future video. I think the Rise of the Zombies would make a very little fun video around Halloween. There has been a bunch of brand new technology added to the game. So I mentioned before the estates, kind of how the various estates work. So you have the workers, the military, the corporations, the tribes. I do believe it is the same for pretty much all of the nations here. If I was to switch to India really quickly, I do think it would be pretty much the same. Yep, it looks like it's pretty much the same here. Military, corporations, tribes, and things like that. It is quite broken, and there doesn't seem to be any privileges to give out. So I don't really know if they plan on ending these privileges or things like that. And the menu is quite broken, so do keep that in mind, as the estates really don't work in this mod. Another thing that has completely changed is kind of the whole unit tech and the technology. So as you can see, you start out with the composite bowman, and as you progress down at the very end, you will getting the machine gun, which is absolutely insane here. That's a tech 85. And the icons are quite different here. So basically what this mod is supposed to do, and from what I gathered, is you start out in the base game, or you start out in 2021 at the start of the 21st century, or how long we've come with the 21st century, and the whole kind of time is supposed to decay. So you're supposed to kind of decay into World War III, you're supposed to go kind of into the zombies, and the world is supposed to collapse and things like that. So that's why you kind of have the other techs here, the military techs, that are much lower. So although we are in the modern world, and we do have machine guns, you don't actually have machine guns in 2021. Instead, you are still using composite bowmen. As you would expect, a majority of these nations do not have mission trees. Even the nations such as Spain and Portugal and things like that all just have default mission trees. Do keep that in mind, as you really shouldn't be relying too much on your mission tree to get things done. Instead, you should be fabricating claims manually and things like that, and researching technology. As you can see here, the technology is starting out at Tech 10 instead. And one of the things that I found to be really interesting is, instead of idea groups, you instead have research. So if we go ahead and look here, you have various different researches. You have admin research, diplo research, and mil research. So you have army research, which improves your army, espionage research. For diplomatic, you have republican researchers, and you have diplomatic researchers, which gives all these other things here: naval research, medical research for admin, economic research, and administrative research. So India at the start of the game has actually taken nuclear research, which gives all of these other things and actually allows the start of researching nuclear weapons, which is really cool. And then military base research as well, which gives all of these other modifiers here. And do keep that in mind, that a military base is kind of a vassal type that exists in the game for this mod. Another thing that you need to keep in mind is that in this mod, you will be making way more money. So although this mod is kind of supposed to show progression into society as it decays and things like that, your bank account is the complete opposite. You will be making a ton of money, which makes sense. A majority of these nations are going to be making a massive surplus, anywhere between 500 to 1,000. There are some nations that are running a deficit. I think the United States is one of those nations that is actually running a deficit. We go ahead and take, no, US is not running a deficit, but some nations I think will run a deficit. I think the ones in Africa, of course, are poor. US is actually making 6K per month, which is really, really cool. But going back to India, the spreadsheets are looking really good here financially, and the trade as well. And I wanted to point out the menus. So the treasury here, the icons are different. There's no more ducats. It's instead the dollar sign. and kind of everything has been laid out. But don't worry, these dollar signs do work the same as ducats do in the base game, even though it's just a different icon. They just replace the icon, so don't worry about that. Another thing that this mod added is brand new advisors. So I do think some of these advisors have taken inspiration from idea groups expanded and things like that, and advisors expanded, the expanded family of mods. So as you can see, some of these advisors give yearly corruption, state maintenance, institution spread. Again, not all of them are done as this. As you can see, this guy has no face. Going to the Diplo runs, we have the Terrace, which is base game, diplomatic annexation costs, and things like that. And for mill advisors, for the new mill advisors, as you can see here, we give some of these new ones here. The extra cavalry combat ability is a new one. There are plenty of other new advisors, however, going through them would take a massive amount of time. And another thing that I really wanted to show was all the new buildings. So look at all of these new buildings and the new building icons. So, of course, we have some of the buildings that you recognize. We have the trade depot, we have the church, and things like that. But then we also have other ones here, the autonomous tax collector. We have different things for our navy. We have arsenal. We have other things here. We have the town hall. We have other cool buildings. We have the armory. We have the storehouse. We have all these other things. We have coal plants, so you can start making some electricity. And the thing that I found to be really cool is actually the railroads. So as you can see, you can build railroads. We're Russia right here. And if you want to build railroads, it gives a boost to your trade. So you can just go ahead and build railroads everywhere. One thing that I did want to mention is that there are a bunch of new little provinces. This mod really does kind of overhaul everything, adding a bunch of new little provinces. A lot of these provinces are way smaller. So as you know, here in the base game, this whole state right here is actually, or not this whole state right here is actually kind of just one province. It's just Neva that encompasses all of these things here. However, it has been broken up. So do just keep that in mind that your game will probably lag quite a bit. There's not a ton of new tags, but there are just way more provinces since those tags are missing. So just keep that in mind that if you don't have a good computer, this mod probably will not run very well. Culturally speaking, this mod actually adds quite a lot of new cultures. It, of course, is going to add some cultures that you would expect. It's not going to have a lot of the cultures that exist in the base games, since this is not 1444, this is 2021, so it's going to have a lot of cultures that exist in modern day, especially in the modern day area. So as you can see, we have the Turkish around here, we have Greek is much smaller, Bulgarian, Albanian, Bosnian, a new one here called Arpatin, which is with the French culture group, Breton, which is grouped with the Celtic culture group, which I always love when mods do that, when they include all of those grouped together. You have Scottish, which is with the English culture group. You, of course, have some other new ones. You have Alamaic, this one right here, Westphalian, things like that, Silesian, all of these that have kind of been added to the mod. Some of these are new and some of these are not. You have some other ones around here. You, of course, have the Dutch in South Africa, the remnants of the Boers and people like that. You have some of these other cultures here in Congo and things like that. Brazil, the culture groupings, again, is kind of all the same. Texan is grouped with Mexican, Brazil, and then the natives are kind of all grouped separately. So the native in South America are all grouped very separately, which is really cool to see. The Quebecois, which I found to be quite interesting, are completely separate from the Canadians. So the Canadians are in the same culture group as the Americans, as the Dixies, as the Western Americans. However, the Quebecois are actually separate and are grouped with the French, which is really cool, as well as the Ghanaians and things like that, as well as kind of the northern little nations here. I guess the northern cultures, the natives or whatever, are actually all kind of grouped together. So you have Aleutian in Alaska. Alaska is actually majority Aleutian, which is really cool, and they're grouped with the Inuits and things like that. Athabascan is grouped with the Chippewa, and then the Cree is kind of just grouped in and of themselves. I absolutely love how they have included the native cultures. That adds a lot of flavor to the game, and it really helps to make playing in North America a lot more fun. Going over to Asia, as you can see, we have kind of the Persians, Bakluk, Pashtun, people like that, the Turkmenis, the Kurdish, all of these other ones that you would kind of expect in modern day. Going over to Egypt, you have some Berbers, Egyptians, Sudanese, Said, Syrian, Iraqi, Bedouin, Hijazi, Yemeni, Mahri, Almani, and then in Israel, you of course have the Israelis, who are completely separate in their own little culture group. And going over to China, China is of course split between all of the little ones here. You have Wu, you have Ming, you have things like that. You have Beijing, who's also their own little culture group, which I find to be really cool, but they're all grouped in the same one, at least a majority of them are, so just keep that in mind. You have Korean, Korchin, all of these other little ones. You have Muscovite, Novgorodian, Ruthenian, Belarusian, all of these little cultures here. Not all of those are new, of course, but I'm just mentioning them because I like where they are placed. Another thing that this mod does is add new trade goods. So there are actually quite a few new trade goods that have been added, so please don't yell at me in the comments if I miss one or two. I'm sorry. I will try to cover as many as possible in this video. However, one of the most blatant ones is actually oil. So oil actually exists in this mod here. Oil is absolutely amazing. It's a 20 ducat worth trade good, which is really amazing and gives minus 20% state maintenance. So definitely a very coveted after trade good like it is in real life. And look, oil is kind of put in the places where you would expect in California and Texas, Louisiana, things like that. You have a lot of oil, of course, here in Saudi Arabia. You have some in Africa. You have some here in Asia. However, you don't have too much in China or in India, which means that if you are someone who wants to get a lot of oil in this mod, you are going to have to trade for it. There's also this trade code called Antiques, which basically gives minus 20% state maintenance. Again, it's kind of just, I guess, found in places where you have a lot of classic stuff. So in Iran, in India, and Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, of course, are all going to have antiques. I guess places where you have just a lot of classic works can be found. I guess that's what the mod creators were trying to say about that. If you do know, let me know in the comments below, but I guess that's what I was interpreting. Another thing that is kind of funny and also kind of scary is radioactive elements. So radioactive elements is also another trade good. It is quite rare. It's not found everywhere. You have, of course, in places like Africa. I don't think you have it in the United States. You have some in southern Texas, oh my, and then you also have some in the northern United States as well. You have some in Spain, and you have some in Ukraine, the Czech Republic, Germany, and like that. I don't know how I feel about having my radioactive elements around my wheat and my cows. I don't really know how I'd feel about that. But yes, radioactive elements actually, again, gives you minus 20% state maintenance and is a very worthy trade good. Also, the unit sprites are very different, which is really cool. As you can see, the unit sprites all have little machine guns, which I find to be really cool. They're all dressed in their Napoleonic era uniforms, but then are holding machine guns. Very cool. And speaking of trade, the thing that I wanted to mention is the new trade nodes. So look at all these different trade nodes. There are way more trade nodes in this mod than there are in the base game. They also kind of all flow differently. So it kind of represents how there is a much more interconnected world. There aren't really a ton of little end nodes. So the English channel is not really an end node. Instead, a lot of stuff flows in, but then also a lot of stuff flows out. And again, is meant to represent and kind of, I think, give a much more balanced trade feel than in the base game. So if you know, in base game EU4, you have English channel is an end node. You have Genoa and things like that. And that can kind of create an unfair advantage for the AI in that if you are China, you don't have access to an end trade node. That's, of course, assuming that you don't take over English channel or something like that, then you'll have access to it. But places in China, which were historically very powerful, even in base game EU4, don't have an end node, which doesn't make a lot of sense. As you know, the people in China probably aren't going to be letting trade to be leaving. So why is the game allowing that? Well, this mod attempts to rectify that in making it just a lot more balanced and a lot more interconnected, in that there's way more trade nodes, way more centers of trade, and London and places like that are, of course, have a lot of trade going into it, but then also have quite a lot of trade going out to represent kind of the whole trading hubs and things like that. Overall, I'd have to rate this mod probably at least an 8 out of 10. I'd probably give it a 9, but a lot of the interfaces and things like that are unfortunately broken. Even this is quite broken here. You can't even see it, so it is quite broken. So I would like to see them change this. Hopefully they get on this as soon as possible. So I'm giving this mod an 8 out of 10. This has been a mod review for the mod called Modern EU4. But wait, before you leave, don't forget to click the link in the description down below and join the Discord. The Discord is the best place to talk with me and talk with other fellow EU4 players. We also play other games. We play Hearts of Iron 4, we play CK2, CK3, Victoria, all these other games. So if you're someone who plays EU4 but also wants to expand to other games, or you just like other games, definitely join the Discord. It is the fastest way to talk to me as well to talk to other EU4 players. And of course, don't forget to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to hit 5,000 subscribers before the end of summer. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.